we've been doing this series called I'm In. And so what we've been doing is each week we've been looking at a perspective about this. And so the very first week we said I'm invited. And we looked at the fact that you are a part of God's family, that you are invited to be a part of his family. And then the next week we looked at the fact that you are invaluable. And so the idea behind that is every single one of us has a gift, an ability. We have something to offer that will allow us to be able to advance God's kingdom. And then we looked at the fact that we're influential. In other words, there is a pocket that God has put you in that allows you, a pocket of people that God has put you in to allow you to be able to be an influence, to be able to be encouragement, to be able to support, to be able to uplift, that God has given you that. And then we looked at a legacy of faith. And we looked at the fact that every single one of us, our life writes a message. And so what is the message of your life? And then last week, we looked at the fact that we're instrumental. And we talked about the fact that every single one of us, that we're a catalyst. And that God desires for our lives to be a catalyst that brings about a change in the lives of others that are around us as well. And what we wanted to wrap it up with this week looking at is the fact that, and just being able to say this, that now that I know that I'm invaluable, now that I know that I'm invited, now that I know I'm influential, now that I know that I can leave a legacy of faith, now that I know that I'm instrumental, here's my commitment. I'm invested. I'm invested. And again, being invested means that I make a commitment to not just attend the church, but actually be engaged in church, to be engaged in my relationship with God, to allow my life to be able to count in that way. And have you noticed this, that the level of your investment also affects the level of your commitment? Have you noticed that? Like when somebody gives me something for free, I can decide, well, I can go or not go. Like I've had people give me like tickets to free conferences. And it's like, I'll go or maybe I'll, or I've had people give me tickets to Laker games in the past. And my mentality has been, well, I'll get there when I get there, kind of thing. However, about 4 years ago, I actually had a chance to take Xavier to his very first professional football game. We went to actually go watch the Rams play at the Coliseum when they were still there. And neither one of us are Ram fans, neither one of us are, but we went to the store and we actually bought Rams t-shirts for us to wear and kind of fit in. The Rams were playing the 49ers that day, so yeah, there's a picture of us. And we actually got there early because I was invested. These seats ain't cheap. So we got there early. We were able to take a picture. So our nose weren't bleeding too badly from those seats. But that's a picture of us at the game. It's crazy to believe that is 4 years ago already. Time has gone by so quickly. But I think about just investment. Remember your junker car? Remember the junker car? And all of us have had one. We all had that junker car. And with the junker car, like somebody could get in your car and they could put their feet on the dashboard. You wouldn't care. It was your junker car. I remember I got into a friend's car once, and we were making a left turn, and I actually almost fell out of his car because the door wouldn't close all the way. But he didn't tell me until he was making a left turn, and I nearly died falling out inside of the car. But it's just one of those things. And then also with your junker car, did you really care if people ate in your car? You were like, whatever, you ate in your car. You maybe had, you might have had like food packages and stuff like that in your car. You didn't care. But when you bought your first car, that first car that may have been brand new or at least new to you, the car that you were proud of, the car that when you walked out, you'd have your handkerchief in your pocket and you pull a handkerchief out and you would wipe the top of the car because you were so excited about this car. And then you get in the car and you start driving and your friend gets in the car who's been in your previous car and they get ready to put their feet up on because you would tell him, hey, don't put your feet up on my dashboard, man. This is my new car. And then somebody be like, hey, let's go get some McDonald's. We'll eat in the car. And you're like, no, you can't even chew gum in my car. Why? Because you had a greater investment. You had a greater investment at that point. And so here's the idea: is the greater the cost of the investment, the greater the practice of commitment. The greater the cost of investment, the greater the practice of commitment. Now, here's the truth. No doubt, every single one of you, those of you watching on a live stream or those of you who are here, you are invested in something in your life. You really are. Every single one of us is. It could be your job. It could be, your career. It could be a relationship. It could be your education. It could be your stuff, whatever it might be. But we're all invested in something. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, am I invested in something that's actually going to last over the long haul? Am I invested in something that's actually going to last? It says this in Isaiah chapter 51, verse 6. Look up to the skies above and gaze down on the earth below. For the skies will disappear like smoke, and the earth will wear out like a piece of cloth. The people of the earth will die like flies, but my salvation lasts forever. My righteous rule will never end. So literally what it's saying in this passage is everything around us is temporary. It's all going to pass away. We're going to pass away. We're not going to be on this earth physically forever. There's some point where we're going to leave this mortal plane. And so the question is, are we invested in things that are going to last? I mean, look around us. Everything is going to disappear. It's all going to disappear. And so with that in mind, this is why Jesus gives us this advice. It says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them, where thieves break in and steal. And so don't build, because, the truth is, the things of this earth, no matter how well supplied you are, can still be easily lost. It really can be. One moment, one decision, one action, one economic breakdown, it can all be easily just gone like that. But it's weird because it also is very easy to get caught up in the things of this world, isn't it? It's very easy to get caught up in the things of this world. I described my car last week. Remember what I said about my car is, that I have to open my car door. I have to roll my window down because the handle in my car broke on the inside of the car. So I have to roll my window down, stick my hand out the car, open the door from the outside, and then roll the window back up. But sometimes what I would do is I get frustrated because my car also is one of those where if I turn off the engine, I can roll the window down, but once I open the door, I have to turn the engine back on to roll the window up. So I had those moments where it was like, so I had to do that. So I'll be honest, I've been kind of looking through Auto Trader and Car Gurus, and I've been looking at cars. And I do. I've been thinking about it, and I would love for my next car to be like a hybrid or electrical car. So yes, this Gen Xer is now becoming a millennial. So just imagine me, my Toyota Prius, getting out of the car with my Starbucks decaf latte with almond milk. Maybe I'll grow my beard and have it groomed or something like that, and get a lumberjack shirt and step out of the car in Birkenstocks, because I've embraced that full millennial aspect of myself. And I'm sorry, millennials, I probably just offended all of you because you're like, that's not me at all. But it's just one of those things. I'm just going to embrace that. But I've been looking at that. Now, here's the thing that I've also been doing. I'll be honest. I have been looking at Teslas, Yeah, well, because, hey, why not look? So I've been looking at Teslas, knowing that I'll never be able to afford one, even if it's used. But it's just one of those things. It's just so easy to get caught up in this world that we're in. I do weddings as a little bit extra on the side to earn some extra income on the side. And I did a wedding at a place called Padua Theater. It's out in Claremont, California. And as I'm driving there, which is like, Inland Empire. So as I'm driving there, I get out the freeway, I'm driving to it, and I notice, as I'm driving, the houses begin to change on this street. And as I get closer and closer to the theater, the houses are changing where they're getting bigger and nicer. And by the time I get to the theater, I'm telling you, there are houses that are like 4,000 or 5,000 square foot houses. I mean, they're just massive. And you're looking at that, and then, of course, I get home, and once I get home, I'm in my, 1,900 square foot house kind of thing. And it's just one of those things where it just becomes so easy to get caught up in the things that are around us, things that we would like, things that we would want. And I recognize that. I recognize how much of a challenge that is. But it says this in Luke chapter 12, verse 16 through 19, and maybe we can identify with this guy. It says, then he told them a story. This is talking about Jesus. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. Then he said, I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Now many of us identify with this passage. Why? It's called retirement, right? And so we've been talking, Heidi and I, we've been talking more and more about retirement. And there's nothing wrong. There's an aspect of, I want to build this nest egg so that at one point I can just be able to, in essence, relax and enjoy life and don't have any stresses or any worries. That's kind of the idea that we look at for retirement and what it is that we're looking for, what it is that we're trying to build and to be able to grow. But it says this in Luke chapter 12, verse 20. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything that you've worked for? Now, why is this person a fool? Why are they a fool? Are they a fool for wanting to build more? Are they a fool for wanting to grow their wealth? Are they a fool for wanting to plan for their future? Of course, the answer to that question is what? Yes. No, I'm just joking. People are like, wait, what? No, they're not a fool. There's nothing wrong with wanting to build for your future. There's nothing wrong with that. So where was this guy a fool? This guy was a fool because all he thought about was building his financial portfolio. All he thought was building what was here on this earth, where eventually he's no longer going to be. All he thought was building his own wealth, his own growth, his own development. He never looked at life from an eternal perspective. And so that's why he was a fool. So again, I want to make this really clear because I don't want people leaving thinking, well, I guess I'd have to worry about my retirement. So no. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is we must make sure that we make a priority to look at what are we thinking about for our financial growth for the future, but also making a priority to say, how am I building God's kingdom? Because if we're only focused on our financial growth or financial portfolio, it's just not enough. It's not enough. Again, we're talking about this idea of leaving a legacy. So here's my main point, is this. You were created to pour, not store. You were created to pour, not store. There's a couple that I know. They're the Heffernans. And what's really cool about them is they've been a couple that have worked really hard. They actually live in PV. And if they wanted to continue to invest and grow their finances, they definitely have the capacity to be able to do so. But one of the things that's really incredible about them is their heart for ministry. They're connected with an organization called Young Life. And what they do is, they're reaching out to middle school kids, high school kids. They're reaching out to kids with special needs. They've used their house for meetings. They've met in other places. But they're committed to doing everything that they can to reach kids for Christ, even if it means using whatever they have. I remember once I was getting ready to take a bunch of kids to camp, and we had about 16 kids that we needed to get to camp, and my car only held 7. So we were 15 kids, and my car only held 7. And so we were like, how are we going to get these other kids to camp? Because we didn't want to rent a bus because that would be too expensive for just 15 kids. And so what happened is one of our leaders talked to the Heffernans, and the Heffernans had just purchased a brand new GMC Yukon XL, brand new. And they said, well, just take our car. So I offered to drive their car and have the other leader drive. No, I'm just joking, But yeah, so they just gave it to us to be able to use for that week for us to be able to take kids to camp. But that's kind of their mindset, is we're committed to advancing God's kingdom. That's what we're invested in. All of this stuff that we've been given to by God is a gift for us, but we're going to use this to advance and build God's kingdom. That's their thought process. And so one of the great things is because of the Heffernans that we're looking at building a Young Life movement here in Torrance where we can reach high school, middle school, and kids with special needs. We can reach their lives. But that's kind of their heartbeat, is to leave an eternal impression upon God or upon the lives of others. So now here's the question I think that we wrestle with, and then we have to be honest with ourselves, because we said that your life was created to pour, not store. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, and this is the one thing that we wrestle with, is do I have enough to pour? Do I have enough to pour into others? And I'll tell you, there were times in my past where I would say things like, you know what, if I earned more money, I would give money. If I earned more, I would give it. But I don't know if I have it. So I wouldn't give. Because my feeling was, what if I give it and I what? And I need it. What if I give it and I need it? So what is that called? It's called the what? The scarcity mentality. It's called the scarcity mentality. So let me hold on to what I have, and then when I give more, when I have more, I'll give more. And I remember back then I would dream of like, oh, what if I won the lottery? If I won the lottery, then I'd give. You know, and Heidi and I, we still have conversations even now. Like, what would we do if we won the lottery? Like, for sure, we would tithe that to the church. So if it was like a $200 million lottery, that means $20 million is being given to the church. And I said, not only that, I would continue to work at the church, but I would no longer take a salary. So that all of that could now be given to the church, and we can use that to be able to hire more people and have the church be able to grow in that way. We can be able to advertise and outreach and be able to, so we would do all, so we have all of these things, and how we would help those who are homeless, and how we would help, you know, those who are orphans that are around this world. We begin to dream about what we would do if we actually won the lottery, and how we would use that to be able to help the lives of people. So there's nothing wrong with dreaming about giving, but the issue is if we don't give because we feel like we don't have enough to be able to give. So the scarcity mentality says, again, let me hold on to what I have, because what if I need it? And so it hinders us from being able to really invest in the lives of others. But the flip side of that is the abundance mentality. And the abundance mentality says, no matter how much I have, I'm going to use it for God. No matter how much I have, I'm going to use it for God. No matter how much I have, I'm going to use it to give. No matter how much time I have, no matter how much money I have, no matter how many gifts I have, whatever it is that I have, I'm going to figure out a way to be able to utilize it for God. So if I have a little, I'm going to give that to God and say, God, you use it. God, you use it. And so what happens is, what fuels the scarcity mentality is fear. What fuels the abundance mentality is trust. So which is it that I do in my relationship with God? And I started thinking about it this way. What if God approached the world with the scarcity mentality that we approach with serving him with the scarcity mentality? It says in John chapter 3, verse 16, for this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. So how many sons did God have? One. So what does the scarcity mentality say? I only got one. I only got one. And so there's that thing where I'm just going to hold on to that which I have. But God had a bigger vision. And what God challenges us to do is to have a bigger vision. And so God gave his one and only Son. Now, let me ask this question. How many sons and daughters does God have now? How many does he have now? Because it says this in Galatians chapter 3, verse 29. And now that you belong to Christ, you are the true children of Abraham. You are his heirs. And God's promise to Abraham belongs to you. So, now think about it this way. How many children does God have now? Billions, right? Because everyone who believed in him, it says that we have been adopted into his family, that we are co-heirs with Christ. So once we decided that, Jesus, I'm going to believe in you, and I'm going to live my life for you, then at that point, we all became children of God. So he went from having one to having billions. But he took that risk because of his love. Now, I want to make this really clear. I'm not teaching a prosperity doctrine. I'm not saying, okay, look, if God gave his one Son and that grew to billions of followers, then if you give your $1, it will grow to billions of dollars. I'm not teaching that kind of doctrine. But I do want to say this, though, is if you give to God, it may not necessarily result in a financial blessing, but what it will result in is it will produce something in you. It will produce a change in you. It will produce a trust in you. It will produce a growth in you. Also, what you're doing is now you're laying up for yourself treasures in heaven. And you're saying, God, I'm going to trust you with my life, my gifts, my talents, my abilities, because here's the other truth we have to realize. Everything that we have doesn't belong to us. It belongs to who? God. It belongs to him. So there is this challenge for us to make a commitment and really begin to trust him. It says in Luke chapter 12, verses 29 and 31, and don't be concerned about what to eat and what to drink. Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world. But your Father already knows your needs. And I love that. It doesn't say the Father. It says who? Your Father. Your Father already knows your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything that you need. So I want to challenge you. If you are stuck in the scarcity mentality, to begin to move to the abundance mentality, to say, you know what, God, I'm going to trust you with what I have, and I'm going to give what it is that I have. I'm going to trust you, and just see what it is that you do. I'm going to give to you financially. I'm going to give to you in my time. I'm going to give to you my gifts, my talents, my abilities. I'm going to give to you, and just begin to see what God does. And how, again, what that does is it lays a treasure in heaven. But again, you will only get a return on whatever it is that you are invested in. So if you were invested in things of this earth, guess what you're going to get returned to you? Things of this earth. But if you were invested in things of eternity, then guess what you're going to get? Things of eternity. Things of eternity. So it's important for us to begin to recognize this. I love what it says in Luke chapter 12, verse 32. It says, so don't be afraid, little flock, for it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom. It gives him great happiness to give you the kingdom. So I just want to unpack this verse, because I think I'm going through puberty again. Let me drink some water here. So I just want to unpack this verse. First of all, it says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because again, that's what builds a scarcity mentality. That's what builds a lack of trust in God, is there has to be a point where we must begin to recognize our investment. Like I said before, it's easy to get caught up in the temporary stuff. But what happens is we begin to lose sight of the things that ultimately really matters when we do. We lose sight of the things that ultimately really matters. Even in your home, if you have a family, that's an opportunity for you to invest and begin to build God's kingdom. And that was something that I'm beginning to recognize more and more lately. I'll be honest with you guys. I think one of the things that I wrestled with is my mindset for building the church sometimes was greater than my mindset for building my family. Like, I'll be honest with you. And my wife will tell you this, and my kids will tell you this. We'd go out somewhere, and I'd see something, and I'd see like a decor, and I'd go, oh, man, that would be great for the church. Or we'd go somewhere else, and we see something, oh, man, that would be great for the church. Or we see someone, oh, man, they would be great for the church. And eventually, my wife would push back like, okay, well, what about our family? Wouldn't that decor work really well in our house? And even Tensai said something to me the other day. She's like, yeah, Dad, but what about the family? But it just really challenged me to look at, am I looking at really building? Because there's nothing wrong with wanting to build the church, but there's a difference between building the church and building a kingdom. And have I missed the kingdom because I've been so focused on building the church that I missed the kingdom that was right in front of me, and that's my family? Not even start there. So I think it's important for us to begin to make a commitment to really ask ourselves, because I think sometimes we could do this too, is we can be so busy building the church that we don't build the kingdom. Let me say that again. We can be so busy building the church that we don't build the kingdom. And we're called to really pour, not store. So what does that mean? It means when it comes to building the kingdom, what is the one thing that builds the kingdom of God? It's others. It's having a passion for others, having a love for others, and recognizing that there are people who are struggling, that there are people who are lost, that there are people who are wrestling, that there are people who are in deep needs, there are people who are looking for hope. And so God has poured that into us, and what he wants us to just begin to pour that into the lives of others. But it says, don't be afraid. And I love this. It says, don't be afraid, and it says, little flock. Little flock. My little sheep. You're so cute. Man, you're so cute, my little sheep. But don't be afraid. And here's the thing. What does it mean? As a flock, it means that I have to trust the shepherd. Now, what is the thing about the flock? Is sometimes if you're in the flock, you can't see the shepherd because all you see is the tuchus of the sheep in front of you. And because of that, you really can't always see the shepherd. So there has to be a trust that the shepherd is leading the flock even though I can't see it. That the shepherd is leading the flock and that the shepherd is going to lead me to a place of green pastures where my needs will be able to be taken care of. And so that's the idea behind this is, little flock, am I trusting him? Am I recognizing that he is my shepherd? We say that verse all the time, right? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. But do we really trust him with that? We say that, but do we really believe that? Do we really believe that? Or do we say, I am so tired of looking at the tuchus of the sheep in front of me, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find my own pasture. Because ultimately, I don't really trust that God's guiding the flock to where it needs to go. So am I trusting him? And then I love this. It says that for it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom. To give you the kingdom. Now, the kingdom is so much greater than this earth. It's so much greater than this earth. And the beauty of that is the kingdom is where what? Is where the Father is. The kingdom is where the Father is. And so, are you invested in the result or are you invested in the source? Let me say that again. Are you invested in the result? Or are you invested in the source? So God enjoys generously pouring into our lives. But what God desires to do is he pours into our lives, and he desires for us to pour into the lives of others. What good is it for God to pour into our lives and then we cap off because we're no longer pouring into the lives of others? We're meant to be a fountain, not a pitcher. And so God intends for us to begin to pour and give into the lives of others. It says in Luke chapter 12, verses 33 and 34, sell all your possessions. Give to those in need. This will store up treasure for you in heaven. And the purses of heaven never get old or develop holes. Your treasure will be safe. No thief can steal it and no moth can destroy it. Wherever your treasure is, the desires of your heart will also be. So I'm going to encourage every single one of us. Let's go out today and let's list our houses. No, I'm just joking. Now, I want to make this really clear. This is not saying be poor. It's not saying that. But what it is challenging us to do is to say, do I value God's kingdom above my earthly kingdom? Do I value investing in what God calls me to invest in, or am I valuing only to invest in my life? So, again, if you are investing in that which is of this earth, eventually what will happen is you'll cap out. You'll cap out. There will always be a limit to how much you can invest in this earth. Eventually you'll cap out. But if you invest in the kingdom of God, it will continue to pour and pour and pour and pour. So here's the beauty of this. What if investing in the kingdom of God, I begin to pour into others, and then their life begins to grow? And they begin to pour into others. And then their lives grow. And then they begin to pour into others. And then all of a sudden, I leave this mortal plane, but the investment of pouring to others continues on even after I'm gone. The legacy grows and grows and grows and grows. And not only that, it changes eternal destinies in people's lives and opens a door for kingdom building. It opens a door where one day you may be in heaven, and someone will say, you know what, thank you, because you reached so-and-so reached me, and it's because of you reaching them that I'm here today. Because what will happen is you're in heaven, they're with their friend, and they'll say, oh, yeah, you know what, the girl that I told you about, the woman that I told you about, or the man that I told you about that reached me, there he is, there she is. So this legacy will continue on in heaven. So again, God's not saying be poor. He's just saying, look, value building his kingdom more than the stuff here that won't last. That won't last. So when we look at this investment into the eternal creates a movement that will never run out. And so you were created to pour, not store. So how can you use your life really to begin to make a difference for him? And I think I look at just the beauty of that and just the difference that it can make when you begin to say, hey, how can I utilize what it is that I have? And I'll be honest, many of you in this room, you've done that. You've done, in some ways, I'm kind of preaching to the choir. But I'm hoping that everyone who's, that's on the live stream, or maybe there's someone that's not in the choir yet, that this will influence. But some of you are using your homes for us to be able to meet in, or you've used your homes in the past to host events and stuff like that for here at the church because you recognize the value of being able to make a difference for others. Some of you have gone out and you have volunteered, whether it be, helping where we've done things in the community or helping with the mobile food bank. You've done that, and I'm so grateful for that. But I just want to continue to challenge us to look at our lives and be able to say, what am I doing to really build God's kingdom? Am I continuing to reach? Am I continuing to draw? Am I continuing to build? How? Is there anyone that's in my life right now that's far from him that I have the opportunity to touch with my life? Is there anyone? So that's my prayer. I'm invested. God, I'm invested into your kingdom because I want to see the return of my investment being the eternal difference that it happens in the lives of others. Father, I thank you. I thank you that you've given us a calling for our lives. Father, I thank you that you challenge us to really begin to think about the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others and really begin to build this kingdom. Father, I pray that every single one of us will reach a point where we would say, I'm invested. I'm invested in just being able to, God, here I am. Use me. Use my finances. Use my gifts. Use my talents. Use whatever it is that I have to help me to be able to make an eternal difference in the lives of others and leave a legacy of a life that pours and pours and pours. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen.